One coma, one rebellion, and one political drama that changed the Foundation forever. But before that, let's revisit what happened in the first part. All crew members, those being Vertin, Sotheby, Druvis, Apple, and Regulus, were summoned to the Foundation. Each was given a private briefing by the Foundation representative. Timekeeper was forcibly sedated and placed into a coma. The others were detained, under guard, pressured to formally join the Foundation. Only Regulus agreed. The rest refused, keeping their options open. Tension began to raise among the crew. Miss Druvis, especially outraged, sought counsel from their ally, Miss Z. Miss Z urged peace, revealing a new draft. Despite warnings, Miss Druvis chose rebellion. She broke into the building where crew members were held and freed them in her rescue mission. After escaping, they seized a forest area within the Foundation grounds. There, they grouped, planning for full-scale conflict. Meanwhile, Sotheby grew really paranoid, convinced they were being watched. The scene cuts to Miss Z and her delegate locked in a tense conversation. Their outlook? Not good. Most voters were either against the draft or sitting on the fence. Chances of its passing? Slim to none. Then came the bombshell. A private recording of their meeting got leaked. Suddenly, Vertin's loyalty was the center of public controversy. But Miss Z knew what this really was, a setup, a PR nightmare, mass manipulation, and propaganda. Because the truth is, this draft was never about Vertin. It was supposed to be a step forward, a better future, something for the next generation, not a power move in present. Who held the Timekeeper title? Didn't matter, at least it wasn't supposed to. The one pushing this twisted narrative? Constantine. She hadn't cared before. Suddenly, she's the loudest voice, claiming Vertin's role is critical. Even more suspiciously, the staff member who leaked the recording was working directly under Constantine. Way too many coincidences. And the timing couldn't have been more convenient. Sure, the House of Integratus could just resubmit the draft, but if it gets voted down again, that's it. It's dead forever. No edits, no second chances. Now, it all made sense of why Constantine was in such a rush. As they weighted their options, Miss Z's delegate dropped a surprise. Committee member Pedra had issued a public challenge, a live debate. No filters, no edits, all eyes watching, refusing. That would mean backing down, losing their chance to defend the draft and their own reputation, but accepting. That meant stepping into the spotlight, where one slip up could destroy everything. After some serious thought, they made their call. They were going in. Meanwhile, back in the conquered woods, our rebellious Arcanists, Druvis and Sotheby, were out for a casual stroll, a little forest cleanup, a little friendly banter. The tree had taken over, twisting through the once sterile Foundation grounds. It was peaceful, until it wasn't. A spinning tornado of moss, frenzied and swarming. In the middle of it all, a struggling figure. They rushed in to save the victim. It was Mr. Apple, fresh off his spy mission. Once safe, he couldn't waste time. He was annoyed and ready to talk.
Miss Apple is going to have PTSD from insects.
And no, what he brought back wasn't a good news. The world outside was not all sunshine and rambles. A tense calm settled over the Foundation. The vote was still days away. Most electors kept quiet, pretending to stay neutral, but behind closed doors, rumors were spreading like wildfire. Vertin's name was dragged through the mud again and again, and Miss Z, she stayed passive, silent, no moves, no statements. Druvis totally saw this coming. Calmly, she reminded the group they had enough supplies stashed in the Timekeeper's suitcase to last a few weeks, long enough to survive until the vote. Until then, they would fight their protracted war against the Foundation. Make them come, make them fight for every inch of the forest. Druvis wasn't afraid of long battle. This was the road they'd chosen, even if it was a thorny one. Everyone agreed. Mr. Apple vanished into the trees, resuming his recon. A few days later, Foundation's chambers, backstage, two opponents prepping for the big debate, trading sharp words, witty jabs, barely hiding the tension. But the banter broke as the moderator stepped in. Let's welcome the challengers. Pedra Paul Gonzalez Rosa, committee member, graduate of Sao Paulo University Law School, an anti-drafter. The second debater took the stage, Mark Hall, representative of the House of Integratus, and author of controversial Storm Reformation, Manpower and Discipline draft. The topic, the draft itself. Mark opened the debate with an overview, but he barely got through his intro before Pedra cut it in, a formal objection. He jumped to the conclusion that the line of fire that was coming was about Vertin's alleged disloyalty, but oh boy was he wrong. Pedra flipped the script completely. He didn't even mention Vertin at all. Instead, he dove into the finances. Pedra targeted the numbers. He questioned the economic viability of implementing the draft, pointing out unsustainable costs, unclear budget sources, and the financial burden it brought. A move Mark wasn't prepared for. He fumbled for words, no clear answers given. The audience sensed it. He lost his ground. In the back, Miss Z watched in silence. Then she got up and walked out, no hesitation, no reaction. Behind her, Constantine followed, silent and unnoticed. Both were handed envelopes by staff members in the hallway. But we only see Miss Z's letter from Senator, a message of loyalty, where Senator says that she is stepping up, temporarily assuming the duties of timekeeper, and she's ready to assist Miss Z in what's to come next. While waiting for Miss Z to reach out, Senator, with little else to do, focused on artificial somnambulism training. Hours passed. Then she ran into Lilya. Lilya didn't waste any time. She launched into a rant about her job, about the so-called talent protection policies that kept her grounded. She quoted what it felt like: house arrest, no missions, no field work, just paperwork, and long silent corridors. She missed the feel, the danger, the thrill. Then she asked, "Wanna train together? Do a hardcore mode?" Senator agreed. They sensed up and dove in. A few retires, a few digital deaths. Eventually, they cleared their stages. They took a breather and talked about the state of the things. Ever since the public debate, support for the draft had crumbled. Most voters were against it. The tide had turned, and the stranger still, no one had seen Druvis or any other crewmates. A whole month had passed. The forest was shrinking, with the crew still missing. Even with help of the Foundation guards, Senator hadn't found a trace. Then a voice, Miss Z's secretary. She put Senator aside. "Hey, Madam Z wants to meet with you soon." Senator nodded, thanked her, then turned back towards Lilya. She was already packing up, but before she left, Lilya paused and turned to Senator, the ever-rule follower. "By the way, what's the penalty for damaging Foundation property? And for brawling?" Senator blinked, then answered clearly by the book. Lilya thanked her, and just like that, she was gone.
Trying to recover from their loss in the debate, Madame Z and her delegate met up again. They needed a new strategy, a bold one. Miss Z spoke clear. Gaining 1 or 2 extra votes wouldn't cut it. They needed to seize the initiative, shift the balance. Her plan went over a leader from the opposing camp, someone who is high profile, someone who could change minds. Why? Because there weren't many neutral voices left. She finally made her choice. Unexpected, controversial, Santa Bernard, leader of Humankind Caucasus, a hardline human supremacist, and a very vocal opponent of the draft. But Miss Z saw something others didn't. Despite his ideology, Bernard shared one goal with her: strengthening the foundation. She believed they could find common ground. She tasked the delegate with gathering intel. What was Bernard up to lately? The report came in. Bernard had been consolidating power at the Foundation's Chicago office, the same exact office that was currently under investigation for multiple anti-human discrimination cases. To Miss Z, that was opening they needed. She made her decision, sent Senator to handle the situation. Without wasting time, Madame Z arrived at the next anti-draft gathering. Knowing Bernard would be there, she approached him directly for a private conversation. She didn't bother with small talk. She made her offer on the spot, a partnership. Bernard listened, then asked the obvious question: what do I gain by siding with a losing side? Miss Z didn't even flinch. To his surprise, she openly acknowledged not hers, but his precarious position in the Chicago case, admitting she knew he was holding a wolf by the ears. Then came the real offer. She had a witness, someone with evidence, someone who could testify in his defense in court. The Chicago case had recently stalled after key evidence for the prosecution mysteriously disappearing. Now Bernard looked exposed, labeled as a liar. His accusation against his colleagues collapsed. That got his attention, but still he hesitated, convincing the Humankind Caucasus to vote against their core beliefs. Unbelievable, and the timing even worse. His court testimony was scheduled before the final vote, which meant even if he somehow pulled this off, there were no guarantees that Madame Z would hold in her words. She listened carefully and reassured him she would do anything in her power to delay the testimony, buy him time, hold the line. He had nothing to worry about. Finally, he agreed, and in return, Bernard promised to bring 9 to 10 votes, enough to even out the odds, but not enough to win. Not yet.
Of course, the shift in balance didn't get unnoticed. Just days later, Miss Vice President was already in private briefing with committee member Pedra. They met in her office to assess the situation. Turns out Miss Z's relentless canvassing had worked. The pro-draft side had come close to evening out the votes. Pedra kept calm. He remained all the optimistic in winning, but Constantine, she wasn't fooled. She knew this was far from over. If you're still here, you're clearly as invested in the story as I am. Just go ahead, leave a like, drop a comment, let me know what you think about this dynamic storytelling format I'm testing. How is lore hitting you so far? Share it with a friend, and of course, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Meanwhile, at the same exact moment, Miss Z was playing a game of table tennis with one of her main opponents, open anti-drafter, committee member Katz. This wasn't a friendly match, obviously. It was a lobbying game. In between serves, Miss Z shared an update. Certain articles of the draft were being revised. Basically, they now expanded control over unregistered Arcanists, returned authority to discipline, and access risks. To the School of Discipline, she didn't say it outright, but the message was clear. They had compromised. Bowed to pressure from within the Foundation, but her tone remained composed. She called the changes reasonable, said they would protect the Foundation's credibility, prevent chaos, restore trust. Ms. Z concluded her speech by saying,
"Friendship first, competition second."
To which Katz had only one response.
"You have my vote, Madame Z."
Just then, in court, Senator was mid-testimony, speaking to the prosecutor. When she was suddenly interrupted, the defender from Chicago office challenged her directly. He proposed a live debate while her evidence was still under review. Things escalated fast. Arguments flew, tension spiked, and then Senator said something that left the entire room speechless.
Schneider once chose to join the Foundation under the pressure, but instead of offering any solution or help, you just gave her a rejection letter. I found this letter. Poppers off. In this particular case, you should have reported to the headquarters instead of doing nothing but leaving an insult. Was it because she did not pay enough shelter fees, or was it because the wand she used was transformed by Arcanum, which made you think she was an Arcanist? Does not the Declaration of Peace say, everyone, strong or weak, rich or poor, of any race deserves a helping hand so that the existing peace and order shall be maintained? They were humans. If only they had made it to the headquarters sooner.
The result? She received a formal invitation to testify in the Supreme Court. It seemed the Chicago office was preparing to plead guilty the charges of human discrimination. Meanwhile, back at the Foundation, the draft situation was reaching its final chapter. Even Constantine acknowledged Ms. Z's practical victory, even before the vote began, but not without a few last-minute revisions. She added several article changes, all aligned with Ms. Z's proposals. A compromise was struck, and then the vote began. The outcome, a hard-won victory for Ms. Z and the pro-draft coalition. The past months had been even harder for the others. And by others, I mean the Arcanist crew. They had endured critter attacks, the malnourishment of vegan diet, and Lilya's not-so-subtle spying. Turns out she hadn't been that sneaky after all. But finally, this ended. Lilya stepped from the shadow, with meat rations and good news, she explained. Draft 1. But it couldn't be enforced, not just yet, and Vertin wasn't free still. So Lilya made a decision. She would break the rules, she would keep her promise that she gave in Vertin. She fought through the guards and broke into the Laplace chamber to free Vertin herself, then fled into the forest where the crew was waiting, a heartwarming reunion. Regulus, Mr. Apple, Sotheby, Druvis, and Vertin finally back together. Lilya watched quietly from the side, but the moment didn't last. Constantine arrived with news. The Storm Reformation had passed, and with it, a new reality for Vertin, new responsibilities. But behind her, two familiar faces appeared, Sineto and Miss Z, smiling. Somehow, even Lilya looming punishment could ruin the moment. That evening, Miss Z sat alone, a single gift beside her, a gold board game, a symbolic gesture from Constantine.